Hello, this is Deborah with Black Education TV, and I'm going to be sharing an article in which Cheryl Dorsey, who is a retired LA police sergeant, she's going to be weighing in on the subject of an NBA player whose alleged parking violation led to a violent police arrest. Okay. She's going to weigh in on the story, so I'm going to go ahead and read the article first, and then I'll give my commentary. Okay, it says, on January 26, 2018, what should have been a 10-minute officer-initiated Q&A ending with a parking ticket being issued a stern warning quickly escalated to a violent assault and arrest. Given the circumstances in totality and the early morning hours, spirit of the law versus letter of the law was on display. Common sense should have been in the order of the day. Instead, what NBA player Sterling Brown, a guard on the Milwaukee Bucks, received was contempt of cop. On Wednesday, Milwaukee Police Department released body cam footage of the violent encounter between several of his officers and Sterling Brown early in January of this year. The lone officer had been waiting for Brown to return to his car, which appeared to have been parked across several marked parking spaces in what appeared to be a mostly vacant, desolate Walgreens parking lot at 2 a.m. on a still dark and rainy early morning. As Brown neared the car, the officer could be heard as he confronted Brown using an unnecessarily harsh, aggressive, and disrespectful tone. Research has shown that police often speak very differently to black motorists than they do to white motorists upon contact. That morning was no different. The officer's tone and the way he questioned Brown was snarky, aggressive, and seemed to beg for a similar response from Brown. The officer could be heard asking Brown questions that, in my police supervisor mind, were intended to escalate the situation, first verbally and ultimately physically. As a 20-year veteran sergeant of the Los Angeles Police Department, I have often managed and resolved similar conflicts during an officer-initiated traffic stop. As the professional on scene, the officer's job was to advise Brown of the reason for the encounter, issue Brown a traffic ticket at his discretion, and let Brown go about his business. So, for Milwaukee Mayor Tom Barrett to interfere otherwise is insulting and disingenuous. Sterling Brown nor any other citizen has the responsibility to defuse and de-escalate a police encounter situation. The officers on scene that morning were purportedly trained professionals, and an unruly, uncooperative detainee, not that Sterling Brown was either, is incoherent to police work and does not give any police officer license to assault under the color of authority. But the isolation, location, and early morning hours seemed almost too irresistible for this officer. So instead, this first officer requested additional units and continued to badger Brown as he awaited his backup. At one point, the officer can be heard when asked by Brown, "What are we doing?" The officer's response was, "We are waiting." This officer requested additional units, not because Brown presented a threat, not because Brown was being uncooperative, but because once the cavalry arrived, they were going to put in work police talk, for Brown was about to get his ass handed to him. The body cam showed Brown was compliant as the officer stalled and awaited the arrival of his backup units. As more and more responding units arrived, adrenaline and excitement no doubt began to rise. Most of the officers exited their patrol cars and took a position of advantage, circling Brown as they awaited the signal. Now Brown, surrounded and alone in a desolate, dark, wet parking lot, surely feared for his life. These officers were not there to protect, but they were there to serve. Suddenly, one of the responding officers could be heard yell, "Take your hands out of your pocket!" Based on my years of experience on the LAPD, when an officer yells out some command like "stop kicking me," "don't move," or "take your hands out of your pocket," this is an akin to the starting gun being sounded at a track meeting. Like a pack of feral dogs, several of the officers, without provocation by Sterling Brown, swarmed him and began barking commands from every direction. Then taser, taser, taser. Of course, Brown was subsequently arrested for that thing that cops love to arrest a detainee for when they have nothing else: resisting, interfering. These are the go-to charges when officers put hands on someone, and now they cannot just let that person go. The person must go to jail for something. Never mind that it will be a district attorney reject later. These officers on that night understood the process. It's the culture. It's condoned. It's the blue wall. Research indicates racial bias exists because it is acquiesced, condoned, and then minimized and mitigated. I know firsthand that some white officers yearn to work in those neighborhoods where black and brown folks are plentiful. On the LAPD, the code word for the neighborhood were busy divisions. I've heard many white officers gushing at the possibility of being assigned to a busy division in South Central Los Angeles. I also know firsthand that some white officers enjoyed working morning watch. That is generally after 10 p.m. Why? Because under the cover of darkness, these errant, overzealous officers can conduct themselves in a manner much like they did on January 26. It wasn't a coincidence that so many officers showed up for a mere alleged parking violator. My guess is that those officers on the scene at 2 a.m. were like-minded. We can surmise this to be true because not one of them stepped in and said, "That's enough." Yeah, it's been reported in what I term police code by the Chief Alfonso Morales that the involved officers were disciplined, whatever that means. Understand, Chief Morales decides what discipline looks like and refused to answer any questions during the press conference. Discipline can be as simple as a paper penalty or a reprimand. Since this incident has been under the radar all these months, my guess is the discipline was minimal at best. What we know is that all of the officers involved still have their jobs. Now, the Chief, Alfonso Morales, has let the public in on his little secret. No more circling the wagon. Time for substantive accountability and consequences for the officers involved. So Mayor Barat and Chief Morales, Sterling Brown, and the community, which you proclaim to protect and serve, are going to need more than just an apology on this one. Cheryl Dorsey is a retired LAPD sergeant, speaker, and much sought-after police expert in important issues making national headlines. She has been featured on such respected networks as CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and KPCC. She is the author of Unfiltered Look into the Department's Internal Process. Okay. And for more on Cheryl Dorsey, visit her website at www.sgtcheryldorsey.com. Okay, I think it's worth visiting her website, family. I read this story because the headlines really got me. First of all, this is a sister who looks very young, but she has all gray hair, but she's very wise and articulate in knowing what the heck is going on in this country because she was a part of the system as a sergeant, a former sergeant in the LAPD. Now, she gave a very fair assessment of what happened to the NFL player when they decided that they were going to escalate a parking violation to something far greater than that. Now, thankfully, he walked away with his life. But as you see, and it is no surprise that There are those who join the force just so that they can terrorize people of color. They join the force for that reason. Now, they vow to protect and serve, right? But they are out in the wee hours of the night, preferring the night shift so that they can do what these officers did to this NFL player. You have to ask yourself, I don't care what color you are, what kind of mind thinks that way? Is this a sane, rational person? Is this a righteous person? Is this a devilish person, a wicked person? Now, those of you who cheer for blue, regardless to what they do, you yourself have got to answer for the deeds of your own heart and your mind as well. When you stand before the Most High Yah, and you know that you've stood for wickedness while you were alive on this planet, you've got to know and understand that you are going to answer for that wickedness, for even supporting wickedness. You've got to know that. See, most of us spend our time thinking about this life and nurturing this life, but you forget that there is a higher power that you are going to stand before and have to answer to. And you can wiggle your way through the system here on planet Earth. You can trick and fool people all you want. But when you draw your last breath, you take your last breath and you enter into eternity, where will you spend eternity? When you stand before the Most High Yah and you have all of this wickedness to account for, don't think for 1 minute that you're going to be able to talk your way out of it. Because the scripture is going to say, many shall say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, haven't I done all these wonderful things, and in your name I even cast out devils? You see, they're going to be putting up their report card, declaring all the things that they've done for him. And he's going to say to them, he's going to look at them, he's going to say, depart from me. I never knew you. Okay, family, I'm out.